G'day and welcome to MarkandSam After Work. Today I've got this rifle here. It's a rifle that I've only been out for one shooting session, but that was last week with it, and it's the 300 RUM, or the 300 Remington Ultra Magnum, that we had built up, or it's actually a barrel we had built up to go into this rifle, which is this awesome chassis from GCPD, so Gareth Crook Precision Development, did up this chassis for us. Really like it. We had it done up in all the same format, or largely the same format, but with a different barrel. And what we chose to first deliver, or to showcase this chassis to you guys, was the 300 PRC. Shot very nicely, great round without any question. But as I started to stretch it out and run the heavier bullets, I found that there wasn't much in it. It was actually probably a tiny bit behind the 300 Win Mag once we shot out with a 250 grain bullet, going for an ultra long range sort of cartridge, so going out to the plus 2,500 yards. The 300 Win Mag stood back up. But that indicated to me was that something I wanted to test, something that I've always thought about. I thought it was a good idea in some fashions, but I never saw the stats to go with it, was the 300 RUM cartridge. And here we have them. That's one laying down, that's one standing up. For order, what we have is the 308, the 300 PRC, the 300 Win Mag, and there's the 300 RUM. So quite a bit more capacity, but quite a long skinny case. And from what I've been testing, what it was turning into, the long skinniness is something that would restrict it, and why you wouldn't see awesome numbers with smaller rounds in there with lighter grain projectiles. But I felt it wasn't really going to be a negative thing at all once we started to push into the heavy grain bullets. So it was a test, but it's one, like I said, that I've sort of been thinking about. It's been sort of a thought which I haven't managed to come up with the right logic to, but two things: the 250 grain bullet and this awesome chassis, where I really could showcase it and maybe build myself what might turn out to be the best cartridge for the balance between power and BC with a lot of thump to it, versus very easy to shoot but not enough power and not enough ballistic coefficient in the bottom end of things. This might fit the sweet spot, and I'm sort of looking for a sweet spot in the 2,500 to 3,500, maybe out to 4,000 sort of stuff, but in that 2 mile sort of range, 3,000, 3Ks to 2 miles sort of neck of the woods is sort of where I'm looking at. It's sort of a sweet spot to shoot for a lot of people to sort of reach out to and try and get to, but something that isn't too much of a behemoth of a rifle, and is still capable of doing it well. So maybe, I'm not saying that isn't the case, but it was a really good place to test that. So let me get back into some of the details of the rifle, just for those people who didn't see the previous video and did the 300 PRC. And as I said, the same rifle. And I suppose to start from the top, the bit that has changed around and I've used difference is I used the ATACR scopes on this rifle, but I have 2 or 3 different ones that are sort of floating scopes I have that I actually use on different rifles. And so I think I used the 5x25 in the second focal plane. This is the 7 to 35. It's a 56 mil. This is actually a first focal plane, but I use a second focal plane, one of those as well. So that changes around a little bit as a scope. I've mounted them all on the ERA-TAC bases, nice and easy. It's a nice solid base. It gives me more elevation if I want it, up to sort of 190 minutes of elevation, but I didn't need it. In this shot, I was running just with, this is a custom, URL custom steel rail, 60 MOA. This base is running 0, so it's running just on no elevation in the actual ERA-TAC, so that's just 0. And this has 100 minutes really, but up to 120 if you're not using too much windage, is what you can get out of this scope. So this was out to 2,700 yards with just a normal scope setup. No adjustable bases whatsoever were needed for that shot. Anyway, that's the scope. The rifle itself is just a Remington Long Action stainless steel action. Trued, so it's been trued, blueprinted, whatever you want to call it. And I always do that when we're doing a custom barrel onto it. And then in this format we have actually exactly the same barrel stock. Was a Krieger, I think they're just over 30 inches is what they come in. It's a big heavy bull barrel, straight all the way through. I've forgotten the exact dimensions. We've just necked it down a tiny bit, and I'd say the guy who did the barrel work, I can do barrel work, but I don't choose to. Largely I don't have the reams and bits and pieces. The guy I did to use that is Brett over at Brett Thompson's Gunsmithing, and he did the barrel up for us. And with this, like I said, we used the same barrel stock for the 300 PRC, but the 300 PRC I pulled back to. It's not using too much powder. I pulled it back to be a comparison with other barrels, so that was back to the 28 inches. This one here I got to 29.5. So there's a bit more powder to use, and we used the maximum we could. By the time he did the bits and pieces on the ends to make it all work and got the rest, there was a little tiny bit you got to waste out of your barrel stock. But that came up with like 29.5 inches we got out of it. So awesome, about what I was chasing for the 300 RUM. It's got one of my big flange 4-port muzzle brakes on the front of it. They work really nicely. This chassis that Gareth did up for us, awesome chassis. It's exactly the same as what we used it in the 300 PRC, and in truth, in using it, it's probably one of the nicer, because of the structure and the way he's made it, the solidness of it. It really did feel nice to shoot. It was another level from the lighter weight chassis to different stocks and that sort of stuff. It got a really nice feel about how he's built things. The tension of these things here, they don't lock at all, the adjustment, but they're firm. So there's no free play in anything, and that transfers things very nicely in the shot and really encouraged me to use it with the bigger caliber. The custom bit he did in the front here made up this is a titanium barrel guard, and on the front here put on this spigot to be able to accept my bipod, so perfect on that score. I'm actually running an MDT grip. He doesn't sell grips or make grips, so I use the MDT grip. I really like the MDT grip. The only bit I did change from the original build to this build was I put on a solid steel. Gareth had a very nicely machined, wasted in nice places in the aluminium one, all beautifully coated, that we used in the form that he'd produced it. But I wanted a little bit more balance, and I wasn't frightened of a little bit more weight. So this is actually solid steel, this barrel rider, a bag rider I should say. And it brought it up to where the balance on the rifle is, about on the money. It's sort of right just on your front of your forehand there, maybe a little bit forward balance, but not terrible by any means. And the overall weight, listen, it isn't a light rifle, but it's 22.5 pounds, so it's not a heavy rifle either. There's 6mm Creedmoors that guys shoot at PRSs that weigh more than this, so I'm not saying they all do, but some do. So listen, not too heavy on that sort of score, and as you saw how it shot, granted, I'm with my boots on 225 pounds, so a 220 pound, 6 foot 3.5 human. So that's means that I have a fair bit of resistance to recoil too. But this isn't bad to shoot at all, shot really nicely. What I did in that little shootout there is it was actually supposed to be a close range shoot. It was supposed to be our first shots at all, so zeroed and everything. It was just bore sights, went out. It was going to be 600 yards, the same as I did the PRC. But when we actually looked at it with the light position at that time of year and that sort of stuff, it was going to be another, listen, our shoot finished before we would have got onto that 600 yard target with light on it. So I thought, listen, I know roughly where it's going to be. We went straight to our 2700 yard target out there, and it worked really well. In saying that, I did up a group of rounds with less powder. As I depicted down there, they were all a little less to a little more than 90 grains of powder. And listen, on that sort of stuff, I don't share that specifically because I don't feel there's anything in the accuracy of the load. A lot of people load for accuracy. I load for pressure, and I do things, I make it shoot in other directions. I was paying attention to my extreme spreads and that sort of stuff, and the muzzle velocity, that sort of things. The likes of the lab radar is a little bit of a little bit hit and miss, doesn't catch all of them, and there's to do with wind and all sorts of things, and there's other stuff we've got to do with it, but it still gives us a good idea. And I'd also say I have information to come down the track about that side of things. The likes of people talk about extreme spreads and their speeds and what they need to get to shoot ultra long range. a little bit I'm in the other direction as always. I see sometimes now, I've spent a season of actually looking at that and paying attention to that. I've seen the opposite happen to what you think. I've seen sometimes a slightly faster round and you think, okay, that's going a little further, and it doesn't. It drops in a little short. Sometimes it does exactly what you'd expect. It's a little slower round, it drops in short. Sometimes the opposite happens. There's more going on than just your chronographing, just your speed. There's more than your ESs and SDs that everyone wants to focus on. There's more going on than that. But I'm still part way through analysing that side of things. So that's all I'll say there. What I would say is most of the rounds I did up at a slightly lower pressure. And then I just had 5 rounds I did up at 2 grains higher. The one peculiar thing I'd say out of that is it actually felt like it shot a tiny bit lighter, like there was less recoil or it was smoother recoil. It felt a little nicer with the slightly more powder, which is, that's a bit peculiar, but it's probably where I'll end up going. And that moved us into running the 3,000 feet per second out of a 250 gram projectile.
Beautiful.
So that turns into something that's working really well and really going to be nice to go and shoot out of the 2 miles. As to whether we get there or not, it's raining again this weekend, so might be the end of our season. Who knows? Never say never. It could be dry for the next 2 months, and we'll get to do it. I'm not fussed either way. I was super happy how this thing shot. Really shot nicely. And it's performing really, really well. Really happy with it. Nice amount of control. Like I said, 22 pounds, so it's not a monster. That accuracy, to be honest, I don't know, I can repeat that. A 10-inch group, a 10-inch 3-shot group at 2,700 yards. That was super impressive. We fairly quickly got on, once I'd figured it all out. Keep in mind, barrels settling in, so speed was raising a little bit through those previous shots. I was sort of keeping in front of that, but it really settled over the 2 shots prior to that. And then we're on, and it hit. We had, I think there was like 12 of the extreme spread over those 3 shots, which was the lowest number for the last one that went slightly over. So, like I said, not necessarily that was on the 4th shot. But to see that sort of group out of it, holding on, center on the target and hitting that accurately, that's really, 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 well, surprising to be truthful for a barrel that's got that short a life to it and shooting that well. I'm really impressed. And listen, I would have to say I hear a lot of times about the cartridge must be super accurate. Listen, the cartridge seems to be very efficient. The bullet seems really nice. I'm really looking forward to seeing the Burger 245 grains and playing with those and see and compare. But like I said with the A-tips, once they get to this size, they seem to be very good. But listen, it's the whole rifle, it's the whole setup. The chassis, there's definitely something extra in the nicer feel and the way it performs. I would definitely put something into the quality of this sort of chassis when it comes to accuracy. The barrel length, using this sort of speed and using the big bull barrel, there's definitely extra bits and pieces come with that. And then it comes down to combination. No, I wouldn't say that one round is more accurate than another round. I would say one rifle, one shooter, one set of conditions. Yeah, they're all possible to get to that place. Efficiencies, ease to load, ease nodes for guys who do that side of things. Yes, that can all be easier to find in one round versus another round. But accuracy, how straight that bullet flies, no, I don't. I'd never put a round up to that job. Like I said, really the rifle for sure, and obviously the nut behind the butt. Anyway, listen, that's the overview of it. Really wrapped with it. Looking forward to getting out and stretching out even further, but super impressed at this moment. Yeah, let us know any comments. Hit Gareth up over there. He's this chassis I'm super impressed with. It's not in your budget basement side of things by any means, but I'm super impressed with it. The bits and pieces he did, so worked really nicely. Beyond that, and thanks very much, Brett, he got this barrel through nice and quickly for us, which is for a guy that's flat out doing everything. That's great to have that sort of help. But yeah, I'm really happy with it, and it sounds like what we saw, people were happy with what they saw. But anyway, thanks for checking in on us, and we'll catch you next time.